Okay, so I have a new program here, and we have a decision in this one. Basically, I'm going to have the user enter their body temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to display a message based on normal body temperature. I have normal body temperature would be approximately between 97 degrees and 99.5 degrees. Everyone says 98.6, but this range is actually normal. If it's a little bit low, like between 95 and 97 degrees, then we're going to say your temperature is low, come to the clinic for an evaluation. If it's lower than 95 degrees, like that's getting into areas of hypothermia, so we're going to say you're at risk for hypothermia, get to the emergency room right away. And then, same thing on the high side, like if it's between 99.5 and 103, that's a fever, obviously, not necessarily an emergency. So we're going to say you have a fever, please come to the clinic for an evaluation. But then if it gets higher than 103, that's getting into like high fever, dangerous high fever range. So we're going to say you have a dangerously high fever, please get to the emergency room right away. So I want to, well, I'll demo it real quickly. You can kind of expect, like, let's say somebody has 103.5 fever. I change the color to red if they have a really high fever, and then I also change it to blue if they're in hypothermia. So let me do maybe a 94.5. This is somebody with hypothermia. Okay, and there it is. And now let's just do your standard 98.6. Your temperature is normal. So what I want to do here is really pick apart the if-else decision structure. Some of the syntax is very strange to me as somebody who's new to this language. So, before I get there, I did isolate the red and blue colors. You can make these with escape sequences. So that's how I did that. So I just put those in variables called red and blue, and that'll cause the color change. So let's take a look at this. We have a compound condition isolating that normal range. And I think we've seen something like this before in this class. When you have a compound condition, think about somebody who's in the normal range. Two things have got to be true. They've got to be greater than or equal to 97 degrees body temperature, and they also have to be less than 99.5. Okay, so in order for a number to be in that range, both of those things has to be true. So it's a compound condition with the word and. Now, my first kind of surprise in coding this statement was in Python you have a colon after your if clause, after your condition, basically. Okay, and then another thing with Python, indentation, or white space as we would call it, matters. So and it doesn't matter like how many spaces you have, but you have to be consistent. Consistency matters. So I like 2 spaces. That tends to be my habit. So I'll boot in a couple of spaces here. All right, and now I'm going to stay with the 2 space format all the way through. Okay, and then here's another thing. Like in most languages, you see this construct, else if. Not in Python. You get this strange word, elif. That means else if in Python. So this is for the people whose temperature is just kind of low. If the temperature is between the 95 and 97 range, it's a low temperature. We're not ready to send them to the emergency room yet, but we do want to take a look at them. So there's that, okay? And then I have another elif. This is for the hypothermia people. Now I want to show you this, okay? This is part of the reason why I went with the blue and the red, because okay, as I said, I went with the 2 spaces, and I need to stick with the 2 spaces. So, for example, if I did 3 spaces on this, watch what happens when I run this. Already I have an error. Okay, so spacing matters, but you've got to be consistent. So 2 spaces all the way through. Now, if I had done a 3-space thing, fine. That'll work. It's just got to be consistent. Now they're all 3 spaces, and that'll work. Okay. So, yeah, so that is the hypothermia people. And then let's see, we have just the kind of high, like the feverish people, but they're not like ready to go to the emergency room yet. And lastly, the super high fever people that we need to see right away. And I'm going to display that in red. Once again, gotta be consistent with the spacing there. So that's your decision structure in Python. A lot of syntax quirks from my perspective, because I've been teaching in other languages for a long time now, and this to me is unusual. The colon, certainly this word elif. Certainly the spacing. So hopefully, if you don't have quite as much experience, you'll take to this more naturally than somebody who's been doing it a different way for many years. But it's all about syntax, and by now you know that if it's not perfect, it's not going to run.